All right, so you want to learn about this green sensation stuff, right?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So we got all this info from the company, like their descriptions and FAQs, and even some reviews from
Yeah.
people using it. So we're going to do a deep dive into it.
All right,
Yeah, you ready to get to the bottom of this plant booster stuff?
let's do it.
All right, so first off, they keep talking about like heavier and more compact buds. Is that something you're going for in your setup?
I think that's what most growers are looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So how do they actually pull that off?
Well, the thing that really stands out to me is they talk about a modified carbon molecule.
Hold on. Modified. That's not something you see every day. What makes this carbon so special?
It seems like it's all about like how the plant can use the carbon. They designed it to be absorbed really easily so it can like supercharge photosynthesis, especially when the plant is developing buds.
Oh, so it's like giving your plants an energy drink specifically for growing buds.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, but like how does that even work? Does the source material go into the science at all?
It gets a little complicated, but they're basically saying that this molecule like interacts with the plant systems to really optimize energy transfer during photosynthesis. It's not just about giving it more carbon, it's about making sure the carbon is available when and where the plant needs it.
So it's like fine-tuning the plant's engine instead of just like force feeding it.
Exactly, and that's where their whole 4-in-1 thing comes in. They say this stuff leads to heavier buds, but also like denser buds, better resistance to stress, and even better nutrient uptake.
Wait, 4 benefits from one product?
That's what they're claiming.
Okay, I'm a little skeptical. Let's
Yeah.
break those down one by one, starting with the heavier buds. What's the link between this carbon molecule and bud size?
Well, the modified carbon is important for overall plant health and energy, but when it comes to bud size, it seems like the other ingredients are doing the heavy lifting, mainly potassium, phosphorus, and iron, all the essential stuff for flower production.
Oh, right, the classic
Yeah.
flower boosters. But is there anything special about how green sensation uses them?
What I found interesting is they emphasize how important potassium is, not just for bud development, but also for transport within the plant. Like it's a delivery system, making sure the water and nutrients get from the roots all the way to those buds.
Well, it's not just about having the right ingredients. It's about making sure they get where they need to go.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the compact buds? How does this stuff make them denser?
Think of it on a cellular level, during flowering. The plant's dividing cells like crazy to form those buds, and green sensation, especially the phosphorus and iron, helps that process along, which leads to denser, more compact buds.
So it's like shaping the structure of the buds themselves, not just making them bigger.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Interesting. All right, what about this better resistance thing? Does that have something to do with potassium again?
You got it. Potassium is really important for overall plant strength. It strengthens those cell walls so the plant is sturdier and can handle stress better. Things like pests, diseases, even changes in the environment.
It's like giving them armor to face the world.
Exactly. And a stronger plant's usually a healthier plant, so you get better yields too.
Makes sense. Okay, now the last one, this improved nutrient uptake thing, I'm really curious about this.
Yeah.
Is that another benefit of the modified carbon?
It seems like some of that carbon stays in the soil and it helps make the minerals that are already there more available to the plant, like it's prepping the soil for optimal nutrient delivery.
Wow, so it's working on like multiple levels, both inside the plant and in the soil itself. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive approach to plant nutrition.
Okay, so we've got a good idea of what green sensation is now. Let's get practical. How do you actually use this stuff?
Well, the instructions are pretty specific about the dosage. You use 1 milliliter of green sensation per liter of water, and you start using it every time you water once you hit the 4th week of the flowering stage. They also say you need to adjust your base nutrients to hit a specific EC value.
EC value, remind me what that is again.
EC stands for electrical conductivity. It measures like how many dissolved salts are in your nutrient solution, basically how strong your nutrient mix is.
Oh, okay, so green sensation has its own dosage, but you need to think about it as part of your overall nutrient solution and adjust things accordingly.
Right. It's not a standalone product. It's meant to be used alongside your regular feeding schedule.
Got it. Now, one other thing I noticed in the description was the NPK values. They listed as 0, 8, 9. Can you remind me what that means?
Good catch. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are like the big 3 nutrients that plants need. And the numbers show the ratio of each nutrient in the fertilizer. So 0, 8, 9 means it's very low in nitrogen and high in phosphorus and potassium, which makes sense since it's focused on flower production.
Right, those are the key players for bud development and all those benefits we talked about. But now sometimes the best info comes from people who've actually used the product. What are other growers saying about green sensation?
The reviews we have are super positive. A lot of people are describing it as brutal and mind-blowing. It's definitely making an impression.
Brutal and mind-blowing.
Okay.
Now, I'm really interested, and I bet there's at least one. I like big buds, and I cannot lie, in there somewhere.
Uh-huh. But there is one comment that mentions the price, saying it's expensive, which is a fair point.
Yeah, that's true. Is it worth the cost?
That's a great question. If you think about the potential for bigger yields and less loss from stress or disease and the improved nutrient uptake, it's possible that the investment could pay off in the long run.
Right. You got to consider the potential benefits, not just the upfront cost.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever used anything like green sensation? What stands out to you about it compared to other products you've seen?
I haven't used this exact product, but the thing that gets me is this multifaceted approach. It's not just about boosting one thing. It's more like they're trying to improve the plant's health and strength overall.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like a holistic approach
Mm.
to plant health instead of just focusing on one specific result.
Exactly. And that's what I always find so fascinating about plant care, how everything is connected.
Yeah, for sure.
Like one little change can affect the whole system.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It reminds me that plants are these complex living things, and there's always more to learn about how they interact with their surroundings and everything we give them.
Absolutely. And I think that's something you as a grower are always thinking about.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
How do you find that balance between giving them specific nutrients and having a more holistic strategy in your setup?
It's definitely a learning curve. I'm always trying to find that sweet spot between giving my plants the exact nutrients they need while also making sure their environment is healthy overall.
Yeah.
It could be a real balancing act.
I bet there are so many things to consider, like the type of plant, the soil, the environment. It's always changing.
Right, and then you add in these special products like Green Sensation, each with their own claims and potential benefits.
Exactly.
It can be tough trying to figure out what's actually going to help your plants, with
Mm.
all this information out there. Speaking of information overload, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about the science behind Green Sensation.
Yeah.
Did they go into any specifics about how they developed this modified carbon molecule?
They didn't get too deep into the details, but they did mention that it took years of research and development.
Oh, wow.
They were trying to create a form of carbon that the plant could use more easily, especially during that crucial flowering stage.
So it wasn't just a random discovery. They were intentionally trying to make something new.
Exactly. They were specifically targeting better photosynthesis and nutrient uptake so the buds could develop as well as possible. That's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying before about saving money in the long run.
Yeah.
If this modified carbon really does help the plant use nutrients more efficiently, you might not need to use as much fertilizer overall.
That's the idea, at least. And it makes sense. If the plant can make the most of what it's getting, you wouldn't need to supplement as much.
Right.
But of course, real-world results will always depend on a bunch of factors.
For sure. It's never as easy as add this and your plants will explode. There's always other stuff going on.
Right.
Speaking of real-world results, let's go back to those grower reviews.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about some of the positive feedback, but did anyone mention any challenges or like unexpected things that happened when they used Green Sensation?
That's a good point. Positive reviews are great, but it's always good to know what kind of issues other growers have run into.
Yeah, let me see. Here's one that says, you got to be careful not to over-fertilize when you're using Green Sensation.
Oh, right.
They say because it's such a strong booster, it's easy to overdo it if you're not paying attention.
That makes sense with any strong nutrient supplement. You got to start slow and see how your plants react before giving them too much.
Yeah, you don't want to go crazy and end up with nutrient burn or something.
Right.
There's another comment here about pH levels. They say it's really important to keep the pH balanced in your nutrient solution when you're using Green Sensation.
Oh, interesting.
Apparently, this modified carbon molecule is kind of sensitive to pH changes.
That makes sense. pH is really important for nutrient availability, so you got to make sure it's in the right range so the plants can actually absorb all the good stuff that Green Sensation is providing.
So it seems like even though Green Sensation is a promising product,
Huh.
it's not something you can just set and forget. You
Hmm.
really got to pay attention to the details and adjust things based on what's going on with your plants and your setup.
I think that's a key takeaway for any grower, no matter what products they're using.
Yeah.
Plant care is all about observation and adapting and learning as you go.
Well said. It's not about finding some magic solution. It's about understanding what your plants need and giving them what they need.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so engaging and rewarding.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn, something to tweak, something to improve.
I couldn't agree more. It's
Yeah.
a journey of discovery, and every grow cycle teaches you something new and brings new challenges.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we try to do with these deep dives, to empower you with knowledge and encourage you to keep exploring and experimenting and learning more about the world of plants.
I like that. Speaking of exploring, I wanted to touch on one more thing about green sensation that we haven't talked about yet, the fact that it's specifically made for the flowering stage.
Right.
Why do they focus on that stage in particular? What's happening with the plant during that time that makes this kind of booster so beneficial?
That's a great question. The flowering stage is really important for plants, especially the ones we grow for their flowers or fruits. During this phase, the plant puts most of its energy into reproduction, making those beautiful flowers or juicy fruit.
So it's like the plant switches gears from growing leaves to putting all its effort into making flowers.
Exactly. And this change requires a different balance of nutrients. The plant needs less nitrogen, which is for leafy growth, and more phosphorus and potassium to help those flowers form and those buds develop and just overall reproductive success.
And that's where green sensation comes in, with its low nitrogen and high phosphorus and potassium and that modified carbon molecule to supercharge the whole thing.
It all seems to fit together really well.
It does.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking about the bigger picture here. We've talked a lot about getting bigger yields and making plants perform better.
Yeah.
But what about the environmental impact of using something like green sensation? Is there anything in the source material about sustainability or responsible production?
That's an important point to consider. Let me see. Here we go. The company does say they're committed to sustainable sourcing and environmentally friendly manufacturing.
Okay,
They specifically mention that the modified carbon molecule comes from renewable resources.
that's good to know. It's always nice to see companies trying to be more sustainable.
Definitely, it's becoming more and more important for people to think about the environmental impact of the products they choose.
Right. It's not just about what's good for our plants, it's about what's good for the whole planet.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the idea of a holistic approach to plant care. It's about thinking about the whole ecosystem, the soil, the plant, the environment, and making choices that help keep everything healthy.
That's a great way to put it. It's a reminder that we're all connected, and what we do affects things beyond our own gardens.
Exactly. And with that in mind, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into green sensation. What are your final thoughts on this product based on everything we've discussed?
Yeah, it's been really interesting learning about green sensation, hasn't it?
It has.
We've covered so much from the science behind that modified carbon molecule to what actual growers are saying about it.
Yeah, it really shows you how much there is to learn about taking care of plants, doesn't it?
Totally.
There's always something new to try and new ways to deal with the challenges that come up.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so fun, right?
Definitely.
All about exploring and discovering new things, and every time you succeed, or even when things don't go as planned, you learn something new and become a better grower.
That's so true. Speaking of growth, I think there's one more thing about green sensation that we should think about.
What's that?
We've talked a lot about how it can help you get bigger yields and improve how your plants grow. But what about what it means to really maximize production like that? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in wanting bigger, better, faster results, but we should probably take a step back and think about the bigger picture.
Exactly like what happens in the long run when we push plants to their limits. Are there downsides? Maybe the flavor or the nutrients change, or maybe the plant becomes less resilient.
Those are all really good questions, and it's not just about the plants themselves, is it?
No.
It's also about the resources we use, the energy it takes, and how our growing practices affect the environment.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between getting the most out of our plants and minimizing our impact.
Yeah.
Making choices that are good for our plants, good for the planet, and good for our connection to nature.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. It's not just about the end result, it's about the whole process and how we affect things along the way.
Exactly. And I think that's something you as a grower are already really aware of.
Yep.
The way you care for your plants and respect the natural processes, that's all part of a holistic approach to plant care.
I appreciate that it's something I'm always working on, but I know I still have so much to learn.
For sure.
And that's what makes it so great, right? There's always room to improve both for our plants and for us.
Absolutely. And that's the message I hope people get from this deep dive into green sensation.
Yeah.
It's not just about this one product or technique. It's about understanding plants better, appreciating how complex they are, and being more mindful of how we take care of them.
Well said. So to the listener who brought us this really interesting deep dive, we hope you've learned a lot about green sensation, and more importantly, that it's made you think about your own journey as a grower. Keep experimenting. Keep asking questions and keep sharing what you discover.
Happy growing, everyone.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive into green sensation. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time for another exciting exploration into the world of plants.